Hey everyone, thanks for joining Learn to Play Games. My name is Lance, and today I'm looking at a game that only has a few days left on Kickstarter. That is Nova Aetas Renaissance. This is the latest game from Ludus Magnus Studios. It is a 1 to 4 player game that takes roughly 1 to 2 hours to play. It is a fully cooperative game where all the players are working together to defeat the game itself. In the game, the players are going to take on roles of heroes that must deliver a very important secret message from the church, and along the way, on their journey, they're going to run into all kinds of problems and tough decisions that they're going to have to make, and depending upon those decisions that they make, that will change their lives forever and then lead them to one of the different endings for the game, potentially being really good or bad depending upon the choices that players make. In this video, I'm going to take you through the main features of the game and show you a sample round of how the game roughly plays. If you want to check out a full playthrough video, I'll have a link up in the top corner where I'll be playing through certain sections of the game to show you how the game plays and progresses to give you a really good idea of whether or not this is one you want to back on Kickstarter. As always, if you find these videos helpful, if you like what I do, please consider that like button, subscribing to my channel. It's one of the easiest ways you can support channels like mine so we can continue to grow and be able to produce this content. If you want to stay up to date on all my videos, also considering that bell so you get notifications anytime I release new videos. So let's head to the table and we'll take a look at how this game plays. I want to start by taking a look at the characters first, as this is going to be one of the most important decisions you make throughout the game, is which character you want to play. And each character has a specific class to them. For example, with our character here, he is a squire to begin with. And underneath that are the starting skills that that character will have from the list of skills below there. So some of those you will have to select, and so as a player, you're going to get to kind of tailor your character at the beginning of the game to the play style of your choice, and you'll have this character sheet that is going to reference all of those abilities here so you know exactly what they are. Each character is also going to have a special power that will allow them to charge up over time. As they meet the conditions of that, they'll gain crowns, and they can spend those crowns to pull off some sort of massive attack or other things depending upon the character. Now, as the game goes on and characters gain experience between games or between campaigns as you play through from one mission to another, you will level up, and you're going to have different requirements for those, but you'll get to choose the path that you want to go. So for example, with this character, he starts out as a squire, but later on he become a knight or a mercenary, and it appears that this is potentially like a good versus evil side of things, with the knights having specific skills and the mercenary having a different set of skills. So as the players level up, they'll switch these out, and this just lifts up and a new one can be locked in there. Throughout the game, players are also going to be able to get additional skills on the bottom of their cards that will have specific requirements in order to unlock those. And each character is going to have stats that are going to affect their different things, such as rapidity, which is the amount of actions that character can perform during their turn when they activate, their ranged combat, melee combat, and magic combat, as well as their number of hit points. And there's also gauges on the sides that can be increased to improve those stats or decreased to reduce those stats. And there will also be tabs that you'll be able to lock into place to denote which abilities you've unlocked and which ones you have. Now, another important feature of the characters is the Helogiums. With these are the threat gauges, or for those of you that play video games, that is going to be the aggro on your character. And this is going to be an important part of the strategy of the game, is balancing this out. As characters perform different actions, such as doing damage to enemies, doing critical hits to enemies, or eliminating enemies, this gauge is going to slowly move up, and this will denote what the enemies are going to target first, whether it is going to be trying to complete the objectives of the mission or going after particular heroes that are within range that have the highest threat. So as the players, you want to balance this out or make sure that you have characters that are gaining threat that can handle it, as the enemies are going to be targeting them more heavily. Each character will also have starting items that they'll start the game with, and then throughout the game, the players are going to be able to gain additional resources that they can spend later on, such as Mandrake, or the Philosopher's Stone, leather, wood, silver, and sulfur that they can use to build different improved items that they'll have requirements for in order to do that. And once they do, then they'll gain new items, or there'll be certain conditions or things by completing scenarios and whatnot, which will give them additional items that they can equip as well. Now, this wouldn't be much of an adventure without some enemies, and there's going to be 4 different types of enemies. You'll have monsters, leaders, elites, and troops. And these are all going to be part of different factions as well. As you can see, all of these are green, so they're all part of the same faction. Each enemy's card is going to list the name of that enemy along with their 5 different stats, which is the enemy's rapidity, area control, physical defense and mental defense, and the number of hit points that enemy has, along with that enemy's stats for making an attack, any conditions that are attached to that attack, and then any other types of abilities or effects that that enemy has that will be triggered at certain points during its turn. Another important feature of the game is the Helogium, and this is going to replace the traditional round, as this is going to denote when both characters and enemies activate. The Helogium is broken down into 12 sectors, with each sector having a Roman numeral and a zodiac sign, which will be important in certain scenarios. As the minute hand wakes its way down, it will activate all of the heroes and enemies in the next sector it touches. Each time it does, those enemies and heroes will go in rapidity order, with the highest activating first and working your way through that sequence, with enemies always activating before characters that are tied. Each time an enemy activates, it's going to carry out its actions, spending its rapidity to take those actions. From there, then the enemy is always going to move its full distance of its rapidity. So for example, with this guy here, he will move 5 spaces. With characters, they work a little bit differently, as they can spend any number of their rapidity, not required to always spend all of it. The one restriction to this is that they must meet the synchronization, which means that they must move into at least the space that contains the last enemy along the track. So for example, if this enemy was not here, then this character here must spend at least 5 points to reach this space. She could not fall short, so that she would basically get an extra turn. And this is going to continue with this minute hand moving around, and each time it reaches the 12, it was going to tick down 1 hour. And each scenario is going to tell you the amount of time that you have to complete that scenario. So either the heroes are going to win by completing all their objectives before the time runs out, or they're going to lose by not meeting the objectives of the mission. 3D elements such as bushes, trees, and buildings provide tactical opportunities for both players and enemies, and depending upon how players are able to exploit these tactical advantages might mean the difference between victory and defeat in a scenario. For example, a character that has ranged combat might want to seek high ground on top of a building, as that will provide them with a better field of view and an increase to their ranged combat. Trees and buildings also block line of sight and will provide cover to characters that are behind them, both friendly and enemy. So seeking cover behind one of these elements might mean the difference between your character or enemy going down or staying up and not being able to be targeted. And the final thing I want to show you is a sampling of the game in action. So first off, we're going to move over to the Helogium again and see where we're at. So we have 2 heroes that are going to be activating next, our warrior and our rogue, and we can do that in any order we want to, as the rapidity is equal. So I'm going to go ahead and go with my warrior first, as he's over here against the enemy there, and I'm going to go ahead and do a combat action. So first, at the beginning of his turn, he would gain a defense on his shield, and if he's up to 3 spaces away from somebody, so 1, 2, 3, then he also gains a reroll token, so we're good there. From there, I'm going to spend spend some actions to take a attack with my sword. So that's going to cost me 3 actions, 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to gather up my dice based on my melee ability. So I have 4, so I'm going to get 4 dice, and I'm looking over at the enemy, and I need to roll at least a 6 or higher on each die to score a hit. So let's see how we do. And I've got 3 successes. Wow, he did really well. So with 3 successes, I'm going to do 3 wounds to the enemy. And then because I did 3 or more damage with a weapon, I also gain an additional wound for the critical. Then I will gain a crown for my perfect strike. It says gain a crown each time you inflict damage to an enemy, so I'll gain 1 for that. Then I have to adjust my threat. Threat goes up 1 each time you wound an enemy, 1 each time you do a critical to an enemy, and then 1 each time you kill an enemy. So I didn't kill him, but I did some serious damage to him. At that point, I don't necessarily want to do anything else, but if I had no enemies on the Helogium that were in front of me, I would have to spend actions or wait to move ahead, as that is part of the synchronization, so you can't double up and get extra turns. So my guy is done there, so it would move over to my rogue. She could, with the rogue, she is in an elevated position, so the bushes would not block her line of sight, but trees and other buildings still do. So unfortunately, she won't be able to target that enemy as he is behind the tree and she cannot see him. Otherwise, she could have potentially been able to take him out. So instead, her range is 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, so she's going to go ahead and target that enemy there. She gets 3 dice for her throwing knives, so let's see how she does. I will need 6s on those as well. So I got 1 success, and I would gain an additional damage if I rolled any moons. So let's go ahead and say if I were rolled the 1 instead, I would have done 2 damage, but I did not, so I'm only going to do 1 to him. So I'll place 1 damage next to him. I do gain a crown for that, and my threat goes up by 1 for doing that damage. She moves forward 3 as well for doing that attack, and she is not going to do anything else. So then we move on, and we have a character and an enemy, and both of their rapidities are equal. His is a 5 as well as my character is a 5, so the enemy is going to go first. With the enemy, he has 5 actions. He is going to attack first as he is next to a character that has the highest threat right now as well that he is within range of. So he will attack, and enemies do not roll dice. Instead, we consult their chart down below. So he is going to attack an adjacent target. It is going to do 2 hits, and each one I can try to block on a 7+. So I'll go over to my warrior and check his skill. He's got 4, so he's going to roll 4 dice. And he needs to at least block 2 of them to stop the damage from getting through. He didn't roll any. He does have a defense ability, so he'll spend that to stop 1, and he'll spend his reroll token to reroll 1 of these. And he got it, so he does not take any damage. Otherwise, he would have taken damage, plus he would have had a condition called bleed on him. Now, that costs 3 actions, and there's only 2 left, so that enemy cannot do anything else, so it simply is going to be moved forward its maximum number of spaces. And then it would move on to the next character, and this is going to continue going until you meet the conditions of the scenario you're playing, either eliminating the enemies and be able to proceed. So let's go ahead and say, for example, that we were able to eliminate all of these enemies from the game. From that point on, let's say that we needed to investigate this location, so our character could go into there, and then it would tell us on the scenario we're playing what to do next. So let's go ahead and say, for example, that we were investigating this building, and so we have a couple of things within there that we could check out. We could check out the cabinet or this chest. So let's go ahead and say that we check out the cabinet. It tells us to reveal location 10. And it's going to tell us how we can potentially pick the locks of that cabinet. If we're successful, it'll tell us what happens next. So the characters are going to have a lot of different things, not only combat, but other interactions within the environments. And there's also potentials for other things that are going to take place as well. So for example, in this particular mission as well, you can go into an inn and talk with the innkeeper. You can go and talk with the guy over by the fire. You can interact with these guys that are playing dice on the table. And each one of these different actions is going to have different effects. You could potentially gamble and see if you can play dice well, or maybe these guys have quests or other information for you that is important for your story that you're playing. So this first model is the hero squire, and I'm not going to mention their names because I will totally mutilate them. But I wanted to show you the models. These are absolutely beautiful. These are resin prototypes, so keep that in mind, as the production ones a lot of the times will lose a little bit of detail, but I've been told that they will retain the majority of their detail, and these are absolutely stunning models. This next one is the rogue and another hero. And from here, we're on to the cleric, and I really like the way that this model turned out. The robes that he is wearing are so impressive. I love all that detail on there, and his censer that he's carrying and all that is just really cool. And the last last hero is going to be the apprentice, and she is kind of a sorcerer mage. And again, just the amount of detail on her clothes, her hair, her face is just awesome. I love these. Next, we have an enemy, and this is one of the witches or gypsies that is included in the game. And I mean, just the small details, the little cards in her hands and the folds in her dress and all that, really cool. We have another enemy type here, and he has got all kinds of details as well, including his horns and his hair. Just love the amount of detail on these models. I really hope that these turn out close to this with the final production. The priest as well is super impressive. I love all the detail on his robes again, and just the amount of intricate detail that is on that model is staggering. Finally, the Minotaur is another really cool model. I love the imposing detail in this and just how massive he is compared to some of the characters. So I hope you found this video helpful in deciding whether or not you want to back this game on Kickstarter. As always, if you have any questions or comments, leave those in the comment section below and I'll do my best to answer them, or swing by the Kickstarter's main page and drop any questions you have there as well. I'm sure the creators would love to hear from you and are more than happy to answer any questions you have. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch my videos and leave me feedback on them. I do really appreciate it, and I take into account everything you say to make the best possible videos. Until next time, I'll see you later.